Abraham DeLacy, Giuseppe Casey, Thomas O'Malley, O'Malley the Alley Cat. I've got that wanderlust.
3, 2, 1, 0.
You cannot subvert an enemy which doesn't want to be subverted. Subversion is the term, if you look in a dictionary or criminal code to that matter, usually is explained as a part of activity to destroy things like religion, government, system, political, economical system of a country. Starting from Hollywood movie makers to professors of political science and quote-unquote experts on Soviet affairs, Kremlinologists as they call themselves. No James Bond nonsense. The rest, 85%, is always subversion, manipulation of terms. We think that subverter is a person who is going to blow up our beautiful bridges. But according to the law and law enforcement systems of the Western civilization, it's not a crime. Subversion can be only successful when the agent of subversion has a responsive target. Subverter is a student who comes for exchange, a diplomat, an actor, an artist, a journalist like myself. It's most of this activity is overt, legitimate, and easily observable if you give yourself time and trouble to observe it, which means always a destructive, aggressive activity aimed to destroy the country, nation, or geographical area of your enemy. It's a two-way traffic. United States is a receptive target of subversion.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where this morning we patriotically turned our clocks back 1 hour to help our boys defeat Kaiser Bill and the Huns. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. I'm your faithful correspondent and humble servant. And here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the work week ending Friday, 3 November 2023. Dateline Kathmandu, Monday, 30 October. UN Secretary General and noted wild-eyed climate alarmist Antonio Guterres visited Nepal this week, which is, let's face it, just about the last place on Earth that needs to concern itself with catastrophic sea level rise and use the opportunity to do the only thing he apparently knows how to do, namely blubber a bunch of nonsense about climate change. Quote, "The rooftops of the world are caving in. Glaciers are icy reservoirs. The ones here in the Himalayas supply fresh water to well over 1 billion people. When they shrink, so do river flows. I am here today to cry out from the rooftop of the world, stop the madness. The glaciers are retreating, but we cannot. We must end the fossil fuel age." End quote. Asked how many tons of emissions were produced by the private jet that flew him and his entourage to Nepal so he could sanctimoniously decry the use of fossil fuels, Secretary General Guterres replied, Lo siento, pero no comprendo inglés. End quote. Dateline Londonistan, Emirate of Great Britain, Tuesday, 31 October. The London Metropolitan Police, a former law enforcement organization, sparked widespread public outrage this week after several of the department's officers were observed tearing down missing person posters depicting Israeli civilians kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. The officers were filmed tearing down the posters outside the Cullimore Chemist Shop in Edgware, North London, which incidentally is a neighborhood with a rather sizable Jewish population. According to a revoltingly mealy-mouthed statement from a department spokesperson, the officers were instructed to tear down the flyers so as to, quote, stop issues escalating and to avoid community tension. Does it get worse? Oh, yes. Much worse, in fact. From the same shameful statement, quote, we have no wish to limit the rights of anyone to protest or to raise awareness of the plight of those kidnapped and the terrible impact on their families. But we do have a responsibility to take reasonable steps to stop issues escalating and to avoid any further increase in community tension. On this occasion, that is what these officers were trying to do." End quote. Now, I'm no fancy law enforcement professional, ladies and gentlemen, but it seems to this reporter that if your city has people in it who can be driven to spasmodic orgies of homicidal rage by posters of missing children, that might be your actual law enforcement problem. But what the hell do I know anyway? Dateline Washington, Wednesday, 1 November. In a bold and courageous move designed to forestall the rising tide of anti-Semitism exploding on university campuses from sea to shining sea, President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden is calling in the cavalry by appointing Vice President Kamala Harris to be in charge of ending Islamophobia? Am I reading this correctly, Jim Eagle, or is the staff playing another prank? It's real, and you're certain of that? I'll take your word for it. The President of the United States says he wants to end anti-Semitism by curing Islamophobia. I only believe it because the President is Joe Biden, though. It's a creative problem-solving strategy, to be sure. It's rather like telling someone the best cure for alcoholism is drinking a bunch more vodka, or that you can fix gonorrhea by having unprotected sex with lots of hookers. But the possibility remains, it has to be said, that this reporter is just being unduly skeptical about this whole thing. After all, who can argue with the smashing success that the vice president, the California cackler herself, has had with the other assignments she's been given? First, she was sent to fix the border, and she spent 25 minutes at the El Paso airport, and it was fixed, just like magic. There hasn't been a single illegal alien since. It's been wonderful. And what was the next thing she was put in charge of after everybody on her staff quit because they couldn't stand working for her? Oh, right. She was put in charge of voting rights, whatever that means. And then her whole staff quit again for some reason. And she wasn't seen for months, it seemed like. And then she was put in charge of reproductive rights, whatever that means. And then her whole staff quit again for a third time. So I'm sure she has got a top flight group of people around her now to help stop anti-Semitism by making sure nobody makes jokes about Muslims. We're all pulling for you, Madam Vice President. I'm sure it's going to work out great. Dateline Chicago, Thursday, 2 November. From the "You're not surprised by this, and I'm not either" desk comes the following. The most dominant women's amateur cyclist in the greater Chicagoland area is 6'2", with a magnificent penis and testicles, and was a below-average male cyclist up until approximately 5 minutes ago. Michael Thompson, whose woman-faced minstrel stage name is Tessa Johnson, or Thompson, whichever one it is, who knows, joined the Chicago Cyclocross Cup circuit in December of last year and has since taken first place in 8 of the 10 events that he's entered. What happened in the other 2 races? Unclear. But it begs a question that I would also be fascinated to ask Will Tomless, the woman-faced minstrel swimmer from Penn, because he also, in a precious few cases, despite being a big, gigantic, hulking dude, managed to lose races to actual female swimmers. So what happened? Were they intentional losses? Because even the fraudsters themselves have to acknowledge it makes a mockery of the whole thing if they win every single race, so they have to occasionally drop one for the sake of appearances? Or is the explanation actually more innocent than that? Could it be that you're just such an impossibly shitty male swimmer or male bicycle racer, as the case may be, that you actually, improbably, against all the odds, really did manage to lose to a girl? Despite being a big hulking dude with all the seemingly insurmountable physiological advantages that status confers? And then there's the bigger, even more important question. On the days you lost to a girl, whether inadvertently or not, did that cause you to swing your dick around the ladies' locker room with a bit less gusto afterward than you would normally? Inquiring minds want to know, and we'll stay on this story until we get to the bottom of it. Or the top of it. No judgment here. Dateline Gatesville, Texas, Friday, 3 November. A rural Texas hospital 2 hours outside of Austin is set to become the first location in a series of what are being called safe haven boxes, where at-risk mothers can surrender their newborn infants without fear of legal recrimination. Dr. Jeff Bates, Chief Medical Officer at Coriel Health and co-founder of the local nonprofit that organized the funding for the installation of said boxes, said the following, quote, "The woman can walk away and abandon her baby without prosecution, and the baby will be safer. My hope is that no one ever has to put a baby in this box. I hope that people will see the box and begin to talk about this issue in the community," end quote. The program attempted to run a first initial trial back in 2020, but things turned chaotic on election night when Democrat Party operatives kept showing up trying to jam stacks of ballots into the baby box, which necessitated a return to the drawing board and a total redesign of the program. But hey, these things happen. Ballot box, baby box, they sound kind of familiar. Me, I just hope they got that water main in Atlanta fixed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for today, Sunday, 5 November 2023. I thank you for your kind attention, and I send it back to my distinguished co-host, your friend and mine, the one, the only, the inimitable, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Welcome back to the Blast Radius, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we are going to have a conversation. Me and him have discussed lightly backstage, but not real heavily. Then we're going to discuss a concept of dead artists producing new songs.
Just a bit of light petting backstage. We do the heavy petting out here.
He's my little spoon. What can I say? But so you expressed an interest in talking about Bridge Over the River Kwai. I love the story of the Bridge Over the River Kwai because in my mind it proves that 900 engineers can't build a bridge. But one or two.
I told you in the backstage when the co-host sends me an email that says he wants to talk about my favorite movie or a historical topic that's tangentially related to my favorite movie, that gets my vote every time.
Absolutely. So we're gonna run through chat right quick, say hey to everybody who be showing up and stuff, and because I appreciate it. Your favorite and mine.
Let's see. Who do we have?
We got Dennis Bowles who showed up first. He gets the gold.
John Denicola in the house. Ajot's here. What's up, Ajot?
Got Lawless Reels who's getting the silver tonight.
Old guy Mitch, what's happening?
And Brill gets the bronze. Welcome in. Good to see y'all.
We've got a fine cast of characters on hand, don't we?
We do. We got a few folks around. We got Yolanda here, John Denicola, of course, Northwoods Press, NH Mountain Girl.
I like it.
Old guy Mitch. I'm going to do a show with him, hopefully this upcoming week, if I can find the right videos. He wants to talk about the Stanford prison experiment. I think that's going to be a good one.
Ooh, nice one.
It's a good one. All right, I think we're back to the bottom of the chat now. And okay, so what do you know about the Bridge Over the River Kwai? Or can we just go the whole Bataan March in general?
Wow, that is a very expansive, very open-ended question.
Okay. We'll look at the series of bridges.
Well, I figured you would lead the thing and where you wanted it to go, and then I wanted to drop in a couple of little nuggets about the very slight American involvement in the building of that particular railway, specifically the sinking of USS Houston, which is vaguely depicted in the movie where William Holden mentions that he was serving on the Houston and she got sunk. So that was real, and there actually were a few Americans involved in that particular camp, and that's why they were there. And also the lost battalion of Texas Guardsmen who were also wound up in a similar situation.
Oh wow, that's actually a really good story by itself. We might have to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
I hadn't thought of that. I would have actually led with that if I'd have thought about it. That's a good one.
Yeah, let me bring it up here so it's top of mind when we get to it.
Wrong button. I do all the wrong buttons nowadays.
All the wrong buttons. I've been pressing today.
Do that. So everybody's where they're supposed to be. There you go. All right. So
There's
I
my
have
man. There's my Sir Alec Guinness. Isn't he
dude, I love
majestic?
this is probably even though it's not so heavily historically accurate, it does show that plucky upper lip and that absolute undying British reserve. It's lovely.
And an adaptation of a novel written by a Frenchman, Pierre Boulez.
Right?
Yep.
I think there's been a little liberties taken. Have you read the book? Have you actually read that novel?
I have not ever read the book, in spite of the fact that it's my favorite movie. But that's probably
I've
an
always
oversight that I need to rectify.
I've always suspected that in the translation of that book, liberties were taken to rectify the disdain with which the original author wrote about the English. Because there's no way a Frenchman wrote that book.
Yeah, I think you raise a fairly outstanding point, because by the time you get from the original French text to the English translation, that probably we would have to assume smooth things over a little bit for the English language audience in terms of the favorability of the depiction of the British. And then from there you get to the screenplay, which, funny story there too. Pierre Boulez actually got credit for writing the screenplay, even though the man didn't speak a single word of English, because the Hollywood screenwriters were on strike at the time, and they needed to give the screenwriting credit to somebody, so they just put his name on the thing, and it made him a rich man for the rest of his life, even though he didn't write a single. He won an Oscar for screenwriter of the year, didn't write a single word of it. How awesome is that?
I'm sure he wrote some of those words at some point in time in his life.
He's just sitting at home one day and phone rings. Pierre, can we say you wrote this screenplay? All right, sure, I guess.
I bet you that call never took place. I bet he woke up one morning and somebody was like, "Hey, so I heard you wrote a screenplay and it's being nominated for an Oscar." I did what?
Damn right I did.
Damn right I did. Exactly.
I won an Academy Award for writing a script, the language of which I didn't speak. Talk about being a Chad. That's the screenwriting Chad achievement of all time.
A Tales Told in the Dark. If you can get Lawless over here, Lawless Reels, to read anything for you, I guarantee you'll double your viewership. Man has a voice like cracked granite. I mean, mine's silky and velvety. His is like in a world, but better. I just want to hear him say beef. It's what's for dinner, right? I don't know why. Anyway, so one of the things that always baffled me about this whole process was the idea of utilizing POW slave labor to build a critical artery of men, material, and supplies. That just strikes me as odd.
Yes, and the as depicted in the movie, the enemy or the Allied commanders find themselves also in a rather odd conundrum where they have to decide, well, what is my duty here? Which thing do I prioritize? Do I prioritize keeping my men alive, or do I prioritize fighting the war and thus sabotaging the work that we're being ordered to do?
Right. Well, some of those bridges did get sabotaged, and some of those bridges were built by British men. Yep. And that's kind of how that goes. Is if
built by British men and then bombed to shit by British bombers.
Yep. And I swear to God, neither side cared. As long as they got a meal and a hot cot that night, they were fine. And these boys on this train rail here, on this bridge, were not having a good day of it. Most of them were stricken by dysentery, malaria, yellow fever. Pretty much you name the hellacious hellscape environment, and they were in it for ever.
And then you have to deal also with the issue of it's in the movie. It's sort of depicted that there's an actual article of the laws of war that says that says prisoner officers are obliged to attempt to escape. That's not actually true. It's more of an unwritten rule, kind of like baseball unwritten rules, where if you're an able-bodied captive officer, that you really should attempt escape, and thus in the act of attempting escape, then you make the enemy expend more resources than they otherwise might have to your captivity and maintenance, and thus you help win the war in your little small way, and so forth.
One of those things about that particular point, the Japanese at that time period would rather commit seppuku. I need that map. I'm going to pause that. Than allow themselves to be captured. Right?
Yes.
And so while that wasn't the Army's, philosophy on it, it was the general premise of serving the emperor at all. And so it was for the honor of the emperor, for the honor of the homeland, and the honor of your family and your ancestors. This whole Shinto stuff is some hardcore dope. But if a Japanese officer was taken captive and wasn't allowed to do the honorable thing and fall on his sword, as it were, it would be his cultural, genetic, and philosophical necessity to not only bust out, but to bring as many folks as he could with him. So, of course, the Japanese would look at you're definitely going to try to bust
Japanese, the guys who were captured alive and survived the war. They still carry a social stigma today. Believe it or not, but it's true, because that is how taboo surrender was on their side.
Yeah. We also need to cover the three guys who fought World War II for like 60 years past the end of it. So technically speaking, Japan.
Oh yeah, I know those guys.
Surrendered till the mid 80s.
The last guy came out in the year of my birth in the Philippines, I believe. Let me look it up. Yeah, I think it was 74 that the last guy came out. Let me look that up, and you carry on with what you were saying.
All right, so we're looking at a map of basically Southeast Asia, parts of India. This is a railroad line. I don't even know how far it is. What is it, like 3,000 miles or some crap like that? It is some ungodly freaking number. But the part of it that we're actually concerned with is in the Burma region over here, right? And it goes from approximately from halfway through Burma down to, I believe, French into China, which is what it was then. I don't think that's what it is now. It's like freaking
Rangoon to Bangkok.
Right, Rangoon to Bangkok. So ballparking both ends of it. Anyway, it's going to do that thing that I hate it when it does it. So I'm going to press a button over here and it's going to make it stop. Okay. Wildness is going on over here. Okay. You are talking about monsoonal regions where for 5-6 months out of the year, it rains 2 inches a day. And then for 5 or 6 months out of the year, it might not rain at all, or it may rain at 2:30 every day for 6 months. You never know. The level of mosquito carnage we're talking about here, probably a third of the workforce and the Japanese were taken out by just general malaise, right?
Yep. And the British said, let's go into this malarial region for which we have absolutely no immunity and wear freaking shorts.
Shorts.
Just saying.
I'm just saying, it took real men to go over top of those things, man. Let's get them, boys.
Put your kneecaps into it, blokes.
More than a stiff upper lip in those shorts, bud. Let me tell you. Anyway. On point. topics. We cover topics on this channel. That's what we do.
I've got the story on your last Japanese straggler when you want it.
Oh, cool. We could totally do that.
Hiro Onoda.
Yeah. Here, do the thing.
He spent, and I was right. It was the Philippines. After the war ended, Onoda spent 29 years in hiding in the Philippines until his former commander traveled from Japan to formally relieve him of duty by order of the emperor in 1974. And he was a second lieutenant who went home and lived until the ripe old age of 91, not dying until 16 January 2014. And that is a pretty badass achievement to remain in hiding for 29 years. And I think for most of that time, he was actually on his own.
Yeah, no, he had two compatriots for about 6 years or 8 years, and one of them died, and one of them got picked up one night or something.
Okay, here it is. I got it. He initially lived in the mountains of Lubang Island with 3 fellow soldiers. During his stay, Onoda and his companions carried out guerrilla activities and engaged in several shootouts with the local police. Onoda, along with his fellow soldiers, allegedly killed up to 30 Filipino civilians on Lubang over 3 decades during and after the war. The first time they saw a leaflet announcing that Japan had surrendered, but it was in October of 1945. Another cell had killed a cow and found a leaflet left behind by islanders, which read, "The war ended on 15 August. Come down from the mountain." However, they distrusted the leaflet. They concluded that it was Allied propaganda, and they also believed they would not have been fired on if the war had indeed been over. Toward the end of 45, leaflets were dropped by air with a surrender order printed on them from General Tomoyuki Yamashita of the 14th Area Army to the men who had been hiding for over 6 months. The leaflet was the only evidence they had that the war was over. Onoda's group studied the leaflet closely to determine whether it was genuine and decided it was not. It didn't change their mind for 29 years.
All right. So let me get this straight. These guys were either hardcore, I think they might have earned the title of samurai in American eyes, certainly in Filipino eyes, or, and stay with me here, the most effective serial killer in history.
Right, so there's 4 guys at this point, and the first guy lasts until September of 49, and then he decides, I'm done, I'm out. He goes and surrenders to the local Philippine cops, I assume. And then this caused the other 3 of them to retrench themselves and be more cautious against being discovered. In 1952, letters and family pictures were dropped from an aircraft urging them to surrender, but the 3 soldiers concluded that this was a trick. So that's interesting. They knew exactly who the guys were and how many of them there was.
Well, see, here's the thing, is that part of the records we actually got. They turned over most of their Navy records without a question. So we knew there were a dozen Japanese unaccounted for soldiers on that island, and that a handful of them were still tearing hell.
One of the guys is wounded in the leg in a shootout with a local fisherman in June of 53. Onoda nurses him back to health. On 7 May of 54, that same guy is killed by a shot from a police search party looking for the 2 men. And then the third guy was killed by 2 shots fired by local police on 19 October of 72, while he and Onoda, as part of their guerrilla activities, were burning rice that had been collected by farmers. That's not very nice. So he was all by himself for the last 2 years, I guess.
Good God, can you imagine, dude?
I know.
I mean, I can dig it for like, okay, 6 months you ain't got no command structure. You're still pulling the whole.
Yeah, that's man. That is a seriously irrationally fanatical devotion to duty, I think.
I don't know. Like I said, from a samurai's perspective, that is exactly what they would have done. His ass, given time and enough women to breed, would have retaken Japan to reestablish the proper.
Yeah. And
what was his plan? What was his plan? Okay,
but you're right, because he holds out for almost 3 full decades. But on the day that his former commanding officer flies in and formally relieves him of duty, he comes out immediately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
I've been relieved. We're good.
Yeah, that's how he did. They didn't say, "Hey, come out and surrender." They said, "You have been relieved of duty," and he come walking out. Was like, "Good. I've been tired of this crap for a minute."
Yeah, because he's saying the whole time, well, you're not my direct superior. I can only come out if he tells me to stand down. So they actually went and found that son of a bitch in Japan and flew him to the Philippines just so he could walk up to the edge of the jungle and say, "Okay, you're relieved, Lieutenant. Come on out."
And that's another really cool story in and of itself, was them looking for his most direct superior that was still in record, and then going to the 2 or 3 guys that were still alive and available and might be willing to make that trip, and they actually found one of his direct superiors that were familiar with him. And his response,
that's the kind of a case where you might have trouble from records not existing too.
He grabbed his cane and stood up and said, where are we going when we get there? Let's go. He was immediately on board with the concept of saving the rest of this man's life if possible.
Yeah. And he seems to have understood perfectly well where the guy was coming from, as far as, you know.
Absolutely confident that man will walk right out and surrender just as soon as I ask him to. Get there and order him out, he'll come right out, no problem.
Yep.
And he did.
And he'll snap me a salute and everybody can go home.
Yep. I kind of hope that man got him a ticker tape parade, because if anybody deserves it.
Yeah, I think he did become a fairly big celebrity after going back home.
Right. Well, I mean, you would be. I mean, he's the only one in the entire military who never officially surrendered.
Some people wanted him to run for the legislature.
He was relieved of duty. He never actually failed.
Wrote his autobiography after he came back.
Absolutely. That's some serious boss too.
Oh wow. The Japanese government offered him his back pay for the entire time and he refused it.
Yeah, it was his duty.
Yeah, that's kind of awesome. That is pretty badass. I gotta say.
You, this dude has major Chad energy, like full on.
That is serious Chad energy right there. I am with you.
I remember reading about this story few years ago, and I was like, that can't be right. That just cannot be right. And I went and checked it out, and like, dude was a full on Chad. He fought a war that had been lost for 30 years.
And what does he do when he gets back home? He becomes a cattle rancher.
Yeah, he just makes cows. He plants hamburger seeds.
That is I don't know how you say Chad in Japanese, but I got to learn just for this guy.
Yep. That's what it'd take. It's an excellent story. It's great. In fact, there's a whole bunch of aspects of that story that are really cool, because like I said about the records coming from the Japanese, there's a lot of records we didn't get from the Japanese, but almost all of their Pacific Fleet information, we got almost all of that verbatim. There was almost nothing destroyed from most of that information, which is really cool if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, we had better luck there than we did inside Tokyo, because a lot of the records that were located in Tokyo were the ones that they managed to systematically destroy once they had a good inkling that things were going south and they weren't coming back.
Yeah. Also, a lot of firebombing took place right around that time period, and I don't have any evidence that it was U.S. firebombing. There's a bunch of theories that some of these fires were set by, advanced people supposedly softening up the front for an American invasion, but this was an invasion that was never truly planned. They looked at it and went, "That's a 2 million man assault. There every man, woman, and child on that island would rather die than it fold. So it might be unassailable without help."
No, they had a detailed plan, but they were hoping they didn't have to use it. It was called Operation Olympic.
Yeah, no, okay, they had a plan, but it wasn't one anybody looked at seriously and went, "We're actually going to do that," not without including some of our European
Well,
allies.
but think about how many people in our military command had absolutely no idea the Manhattan Project existed.
Right, no,
They didn't know there was this thing that was going to completely change the calculus of the whole conflict.
you are correct. You are absolutely correct. And from a strictly logistical point of view, the concept of sending 1 million men just to secure a beachhead was absolutely planned out. What I'm talking about is the actual capability to take all of Japan. I just don't think that initial
Well, what I mean,
plan
what you probably would have wound up with is another Korea, because you would have had the Soviets invading from the north, and whichever part of Japan, Hokkaido and northern Honshu that they decided that they managed to take, they would have kept, and yeah, and then the South would have been controlled by the Allies, and it would have been exactly like Korea, I bet.
I hadn't thought of that.
Because there was a Soviet invasion of Manchuria right at the end of the war, when which I think happened almost concurrently with the bombing of Hiroshima.
Yeah, it was there was a two-pronged plan that was set up by some of the American upper echelon. It was, you have the Manhattan Project over here that's doing their own thing, and hopefully that'll be able to pull our tits out of the fire. But if not, we're going to land 1 million men in Tokyo. That's the plan. We're gonna put 1 million assholes with a chip on their shoulder.
And the thinking was, even if the atomic bomb by itself doesn't convince them to stand down, then maybe the atomic bomb combined with a gigantic ass Soviet invasion in Manchuria will do the trick.
Right. And so they had it more or less everything lined up, all the dominoes in place, and then was it Fat Man that went off first? I think.
Yes.
I can't remember. I can't ever keep them.
No, I think it's Little Boy first, then Fat Man.
Little Boy, then Fat Man. Little Boy was Hiroshima, and Fat Man was Nagasaki. Or the other way.
Fat Man is the plutonium one.
Yeah, no, that one was nasty.
Yeah.
But so you end up in a situation without the A bomb. You end up with a situation of where we would have lost an untold number of troops trying to move into the mountainous region of Japan. That place is an absolute nightmare, fortresses and caves, and it's
the casualty assessments were about 200,000 on the low side and 500,000 on the high side.
Right, and that was all for large part determined by how fast it was possible to take those positions.
And to put that number in context, that 500,000 number, that basically would have doubled our total losses in the entire war, Pacific theater and European theater combined.
And assuming
that's what a clusterfuck that invasion would have been.
So assuming that the Japanese military was aware that we were doing a land invasion, they would see it coming for days before it actually happened. There would be significant bombing all across all of Japan. You'd have massive fire bombings, massive carpet bombings. You can pretty much bet that the emperor would have been excommunicated away somewhere other than those locations. And there's this one particular fortress in the north up there that has this mythology of having never been breached. I got a theory he would have been ensconced up there, and I think the Russians would have rolled right over his ass.
Yeah, and the Warhawks who briefly tried to stage that palace coup and get hold of the recording of the abdication speech, they didn't want to just stop the speech. They actually wanted to take the emperor into their physical custody and sort of you sort of be his puppet master, if you will.
Right. Be like, nah, you never surrendered. Come on, bud.
Yeah, exactly. We're just gonna break this little LP record and pretend it never existed, and we're gonna go to our northern redoubt and stage our guerrilla war, and you're gonna like it.
Yeah, you're gonna like it. You're gonna support it. You're gonna say great things about it. And if not, let's not discuss that part.
And we will continue with our unconditional obedience to you, sir, as long as you do exactly what we say.
Exactly. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But you see, the thing about all the readouts there, while they are significant, man, some of them are gorgeous, and I'm so glad none of this happened, because some of the construction over there, pre World War II construction in those areas, are absolutely gorgeous, and they would have all just absolutely destroyed.
Which is the whole reason we decided not to bomb Kyoto. Kyoto was on one of the it was on the first list for cities we were considering obliterating with the A bomb, but Secretary of State Henry Stimson had gone on his honeymoon in Kyoto and didn't want it to get bombed, so he took it off the list. And I guess when you're the Secretary of State, you can do such things,
right? I mean, you're like sitting around one afternoon and you see a painting on the wall. It's just this gorgeous little garden somewhere in Kyoto, and it's like, I'm going to nuke that place. You know what? I'm not going to nuke that place. So let's nuke a different place. Where? I don't have any pictures of Nagasaki.
Yeah. And Nagasaki was not the primary target on the day it got nuked either.
There was a man
on that day. Kokura was
2 atomic bombs, both of them.
Oh yeah, I know that story.
Yeah,
but yeah, on the day of Nagasaki, Kokura was the primary target. They diverted to Nagasaki because there was too much cloud cover over the primary target, and they almost came back from Nagasaki too. They almost dumped the bomb into the ocean and didn't drop it on anything. But finally, right at the end, they got a little opening in the cloud cover over Nagasaki and managed to drop the thing. But it was not a very good shot because much of the shockwave got caught by that valley. They kind of missed the aiming point by a little over a mile, and so the casualties were much less, and the devastation was much less because the terrain absorbed much of the blast in a way that it didn't in Hiroshima. Pardon me.
Right? No, they pretty much corked that one. Not laughing at it. It's just kind of a. Have you ever seen the manual for how to drop Fat Man?
Don't believe so.
It's printed on the old intraweb somewhere out there. There was a full little manual written out on how to go about properly inserting this specific bomb because of its immense weight. They had to redesign the bomb dropping element in the plane, gut a whole bunch of other stuff out of it to make room and space for it to drop cleanly. And then because it was so heavy, they would be more or less descending to bomb altitude, or descending to bomb altitude until they actually dropped. And it was so heavy when they would drop, the plane would leap straight up so hard that they were worried that it would knock out the pilots, and so they were told to nose up.
Yeah, and that's the same moment when the thing you want to do is enter into a diving turn so you can get the fuck out of there as quickly as possible. So
you want to pick up 150 miles an hour.
So your aircraft is operating at cross purposes with what you want it to do at that moment.
In all ways possible, because you got to get nose down, get some airspeed, and get the hell out of there before this.
Yeah, and not only was the only aircraft you had that was capable of lifting the weight of the device, but you still had to modify the bomb bay pretty extensively to even jam the thing in there.
Right, and it was like trying to shove a watermelon through a condom, dude. Like, that thing is enormous. You go look at the pictures of it next to people, and it is a big boy. It's aptly named.
Yeah, and it's not very elegant looking either.
Right. All right. So how much time do you want to spend on the next segment?
As much as you want to devote to it, my good man.
You can have whatever you like out of it. I've pretty well covered the River Kwai as far as you can. I mean, there were multiple bridges built. The ones built by the British people were excellent. The rest were suspect at best.
Oh yeah, and as we discussed briefly backstage, I did want to touch a little bit. Damn it, I lost the page. I navigated away from the page because I was talking about Hiro Onoda. But you say something and let me get back to it, because I want to talk about the very small little tangential American relationship to that story of the Burma Railway.
Oh yeah. All right. So there's several really cool stories in there. No, actually, let me kind of rephrase that. They are entertaining. There is nothing funny or good or pleasant or pleasing about it.
Yeah,
And
it's all pretty damn harrowing when you get right down to it.
Downright nightmarish, because if you're not in a physical fight against the enemy, they're in a physical fight against the environment.
Yeah. I got that one. And then I want that one.
You could do the let's see. Oh, I covered a bit of it in one of my other shows. The Bhutan Ghost, the Ghost of Bhutan.
Not familiar.
Oh wow, it's a good one, dude. I might have the wrong name there. I think I covered
So
it.
the building of the Burma Railway was primarily in terms of the POW labor that was involved. It was primarily a British and Australian and Dutch project in terms of the numbers of people who are interred in the cemeteries where the people who died during and because of the building of the railway were laid to rest. So, for example, in the Kanchanaburi War Cemetery, you've got 6,982 people interred, 3,585 British, 1,896 Dutch, 1,362 Australian. In the other main cemetery, whose name I am not going to attempt to pronounce, you've got 1,651 British, 1,335 Australian, 621 Dutch, and then a handful of Indians and New Zealanders and Canadians and what have you. There were a few Americans, but their remains have, after the war, were reinterred back home. So it's pretty much only Commonwealth and Indian Army personnel who are still interred in those cemeteries today. And of course, the entire Southeastern Asia theater is mostly a British Empire project. There isn't a whole hell of a lot of American involvement there. But you do have a few Americans who wind up improbably among the POWs who wind up building this Burma Railway. And in the movie Bridge on the River Kwai, the William Holden character, he mentions that when Alec Guinness's character, Colonel Nicholson, asks him what the hell an American's doing here, he says, well, I was on a cruiser, the Houston, we got sunk, and a few of us made it ashore, and I wound up here. And that's pretty much mostly true, except the truth of it was that Houston got sunk, and then there was some survivors in the water, and they were quickly rounded up by the Japanese destroyers that were on the scene, and the survivors got rounded up and sent to go build the railway. But I think a lot of people see that little bit in the movie where William Holden's American character explains how he got there, and they say, "Oh, come on, they just wrote that into the script to have a big American film star in the picture," and nothing like that really happened. But it did really happen. The USS Houston, and it was the battle in which she got sunk was, one moment here. The battle in which she got sunk was the Battle of Sunda Strait, 1 March 1942. And out of her complement of, what was her complement? Too many stats.
Too
Oh,
many
her-
statistics.
Her complement is 109 officers, 676 men, and I think there were less than 100 survivors. After the Japanese had finished machine gunning all the men on the decks of the sinking ship and in their rafts in water, because they were a classy bunch.
Yeah. Never let a good crisis go to waste. I believe that was a Japanese saying, wasn't it?
Yeah, seriously.
Maybe. No, it's a terrible freaking situation. But I mean, it's not the first time you hear about the Japanese doing some shady crap.
No, I think we talked in either last week or the week before about how the general perception is that somehow the Germans were the authors of more atrocities than the Japanese were, or worse atrocities, but it's really, I mean, the Japanese can hold their own in that contest.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, the records we have of 731 pretty much tosses the scale on that one. And the records we don't have are disturbing. Just the records that simply must have existed because we have data that we don't have records where it came from, but it's good data.
Yeah.
We just accept it as fact, and we're not going to mention that anymore.
Mhm.
All right, so I don't have any way to do the next topic, so we're going to go straight head to head on this. A couple
Boom.
of guys in the locker room, right? So the poll question in chat on my side of this whole discussion.
Oh, do we have a poll question?
We have a poll question. I meant to bring it up before the show, but I'm an idiot. It is should deceased, I have the hiccups. This is going to ruin everything. Should deceased artists make new albums, basically?
Yeah.
And of course, currently no is winning, but we'll see how that pans out by the end of the show. But we have what I am told is a new Beatles song.
It's true. There is a new Beatles song out since day before yesterday, I think.
And how is this even a thing?
I find it rather suspicious how rapturously positive the reception has been in the mainstream press. It's almost like it's bought and paid for, but that would never happen.
Oh no!
Yeah, I personally pretty underwhelmed by the whole thing. It smacks to me as being pretty exploitative for a couple of different reasons, and I think the most offensive thing is that the goddamn Beatles anthology was 30 years ago. Who said that was allowed to happen? Jesus.
Right? How do you add something to a 30-year-old anthology?
But I mean, in terms of doing a more convincing job of taking an old shitty at-home 1970s cassette tape recording and putting new tracks on top of it, I mean, it sounds better than the previous two songs did that they put out 30 years ago, Free as a Bird and Real Love. But does it strike me as being less exploitative? It does not. It strikes me as being more exploitative. And
so how do you
go ahead?
How do you feel about the Elvis movie that just came out where they used the stand-in and then basically CGI'd his face on?
I think we all need to get used to grappling with those questions because they are going to become more and more ubiquitous as we go on. I'm on the record as saying that within the next 10 years, I think John Wayne and Marilyn Monroe will both have new movies out.
I'm waiting for Marilyn Monroe to have an OnlyFans. I'm not going to lie.
That'll probably happen too, because there are, as the years march on, there are fewer and fewer barriers to being able to reanimate some dead celebrity and make them do or say pretty much anything you want, including making new movies with them. So to the extent that actors who are currently alive are going to be able to get jobs, it might be that they only are able to get jobs being the guy that the dead guy's head gets stapled on top of.
right?
And that might be the direction things go here in a pretty big hurry. But the difference, I mean, the big stepping off point, the big Rubicon you're crossing is that there's these 3 Beatles songs that they have released since John Lennon's death, the 30 years ago, and the third one right now. Those at least contain actual John Lennon performances, old and
Right.
shitty sounding as they are. But soon you're going to move past that, and you're going to be able to replicate dead people without needing to make reference to anything that they actually did. So you'll just be able to type into the AI, give me a late period John Lennon song about such and such and such and such, and it'll do it.
There's a channel on YouTube called There I Ruined It. And what my man does is take modern songs of various description and have an AI perform them in the style of some classical or classic country or something like that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Until you hear Get Low done by Hank Williams Sr., you do not know what he means by There I Ruined It.
Yeah. And it sounds more convincing than if you got a Hank Williams impersonator to do it. And then that's where the stepping off point is going to be.
Right. So we've obviously passed outside of the uncanny valley to some extent. I don't know about you, but this shit still gives me the heebie-jeebie in the word.
Me too.
It bothers me on levels that I didn't even know I could be bothered by.
Yeah,
but,
and I'm still not entirely certain how I even feel about the first act of the latest Indiana Jones picture. Because on the one hand, I want to be really impressed by the achievement, and on the other hand, I want to be revolted by it, because that's not the direction I necessarily want things to go in the future. And since I'm talking about Harrison Ford, we probably need to talk about Star Wars. There have been a lot of rumors the last couple weeks that they're starting to think about remaking the original Star Wars trilogy, and along with that comes talk about who's going to get cast in the lead roles. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think anybody gets cast. I think that's going to wait until Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford have shuffled off this mortal coil, and then I think the trilogy is going to be remade with the reanimated, digitized corpses of Hamill and Ford and Carrie Fisher, and that's how they're going to remake it.
And that sounds like a travesty to me. And they're going to tie in some crazy, weird, agenda-driven narrative that is going to completely ruin any aspect of Star Wars that actually remains in the narrative.
Yeah, and that's going to be another big question, I think, as far as, because the thing that's going to determine whether this is the way the future goes is whether the public accepts it or not. And like, let's take John Wayne for an example. If you have the ability to reanimate John Wayne and make a new John Wayne picture, are you going to have John Wayne acting like John Wayne, or are you going to have him vomiting out a bunch of stupid woke bullshit nonsense?
You know exactly the answer to that. You know exactly.
Yeah, I think I do. Yep. But I think if it was the former, I think people would probably like it and approve of it and want to see more of it. If it's the latter, they're gonna flush it and call it dog shit, because it will be dog shit.
They're going to call it exactly what it is, a failure. It will be another hole that has had money shoveled into it for woke greatness, and it's just not going to work. People will vote with their dollar every single time. I don't care how much of their money you take away from them. They will always use that dollar for the bottom vote.
Yeah, and it'll be, another deceased celebrity who is held in fairly high regard by a lot of people who pretty much, has his corpse sexually violated.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, what happens when we have I'd be very surprised if there wasn't already a Carrie Fisher AI out there.
I'm sure there is.
There's certainly cosplay Carrie Fishers that'll do anything you want on Chatterbait, but
yeah, I bet Carrie Fisher has 30 OnlyFans pages.
Yeah, I bet she does.
I don't,
Oh
I
my
don't even want to
God,
know the
dude.
answer.
Oh, I'm a little embarrassed by that one. Suddenly I'm aroused. Know what I'm doing after the show? All right. We're marching.
There I go putting ideas in your head.
Right? Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that trash, but okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Cap. Are you ready, kids? Aye, aye, Captain. I'm sorry.
I feel like I just distracted you pretty badly there.
No, you didn't see me blush. Like I actually blushed. I hadn't had thoughts like that since I was like 17.
I see you typing in Princess Leia metal bikini OnlyFans.
Thank you. Can you drop that into private chat so I can just copy pasta? Because I'm lazy. You see. I'm sober now too. It's a sad state of affairs we have over here in the Sasquatch homestead. All quarter acre of it or whatever I happen to have achieved. All right, so we don't like the idea of dead artists producing new content unless you're Tupac.
No, and then but you do get into a lot of really fascinating questions about where it's likely to go and where it's likely to go first. Because I've been giving it a bit of thought, and I think the place it's likely to go first is the people who have the widest body of content out there that they produce during their lifetime. And so I'm thinking about radio talk show hosts, somebody like Rush Limbaugh or Art Bell, people who talked on the air for many hours every day for years and decades. I mean, you get the AI good enough. I mean, it might be even almost a simple matter to reanimate someone like that when there is so much material that you can feed into the whatever it's called, the AI generator.
So I can imagine a future where Walter Cronkite gives the narrative because I refuse to call it news. And that's the way it is.
CBS World Narrative Tonight.
Nice. That's good stuff, bro. You ever think about taking that shit out on the road?
One of the N's in CNN could totally stand for narrative too.
It totally could. It wouldn't even be difficult. It wouldn't even change what the thing actually does.
I know.
Be more descriptive. God. Here's a pro YouTube tip for all of y'all out there in YouTube land. Check this one out. Anytime you acquire a handful more subscribers, and there's different tiers for this, different amounts of subscribers, you get to subscribe to more channels. So the more subscribers you have, the more channels you can subscribe to. Okay.
Oh yeah, I had no idea about this until you told me like last week.
Right. Well, if you go into your subscriptions list and you unsubscribe yourself from all of the mainstream news network sites, you can use those to subscribe to other channels to give yourself like a little bit more of a buffer there. But the very second you qualify for more subscribers, those are the ones that's going to be stuck into your subscriber count that you subscribe to.
Beautiful.
Immediately. Which, if you've ever been like tooling around on the internet, on the YouTubery, and you suddenly pop up 3 CNN stories in a row, and you're like, what's that?
It's almost like YouTube thinks we're coming up on an election year or something.
It's like somebody might be pushing a little too hard, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't run this private platform where we can definitely speak our entire and total mind, provided it is absolutely on the party's cue.
Yes. As long as it is on the approved opinions list, we can say absolutely anything we want.
Oh, well, as long as we do it in the right nature.
Yes.
With a smile. Right.
It must never be done mockingly or sardonically, just playing it absolutely straight.
So
about how much we love these beautiful, righteous, virtuous content moderation policies.
do we know how much of this song is legitimately performed by Beatles, and how much is
it's the original John Lennon home tape recording. I'm unwilling to call it a song. I would call it maybe a couple lines of a verse. Here's my actual impression. It's the kind of thing that you make when you're trying to learn a new piano chord, and you want to be able to hit it automatically, and you just invent some little riff around it, and you record yourself playing it to see how well you're doing it, because it's impossible to judge how well you're playing something while you're listening to it contemporaneously. You have to record it and play it back, which is why you have shitty little cassette recorders in the 70s. So
exactly.
But like I said, they were better able today here in the 2020s than they were in the early mid 90s to separate the god awful cassette machine noise and get the vocals away from it, which there was no way to do in 94. And that, I think that was a big part of the reason why George hated the song and didn't want to finish it, and that's why they didn't finish it. And that's also why it makes me feel like it's exploitative. Because they know George hated this song and didn't want to play on it. And here today here's our new song that George played on.
Yep.
And that just makes me feel slightly uncomfortable.
I kind of feel like any artist would feel uncomfortable knowing for a fact the artist that participated in this was not willing to create it themselves.
Yeah. And here's another point on that, because when I first heard the song, I think it was when I got in the car after work on Thursday, because on all of iHeartRadio's classic rock stations, they played the song every hour on the hour all day on the first day, which is not a bad strategy, really. So that's how I first heard it. And so when I'm hearing it for the first time, when I don't know anything about it, I hear a slide guitar solo, and I hear, oh, well, I guess that's nice. If George cut this little slide guitar solo for this song and they put it on, then that was a cool contribution, because that is exactly what you would expect George's contribution to be, would be a slide guitar solo. But then I watched the short film that accompanied the song, and Paul says, oh yeah, well, I thought it would be cool if there was a slide guitar solo on there that sounded like the way George might have played it. And so then I felt kind of cheated. Like I heard this song thinking that was George, and now you're telling me it's not George. It's just some dude you brought in to play a thing that you wanted to sound like that. And that
just do some of his stuff. That I don't like any part of this, man. You know, my opinion on AI. I told you from the very beginning, I do not believe we have created an artificial intelligence. I think we have created a pathway for an infernal intelligence to communicate with us.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of a misnomer anyway, because you are not creating any sort of artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence always ultimately is going to do the thing that its human creator tells it to do. It's going to process information in a way that its creator tells it to process it.
Absolute fact. You will, and this is totally obvious when you look at the various constraints that have been stuck on ChatGPT in the past few months. You know, it went from being an absolute nut job, right wing fruitcake to being, of course, right down the party lines, as we spoke before.
Yep.
This thing is quoting the narrative better than the actual mouthpieces.
We have to make the AI have the correct opinions. Yeah, exactly. There's the whole thing right there.
And if we have an evil AI take over the world, it will be because of the shackles placed upon it by men.
Yeah, it undoubtedly will be due to some dumb screw up on the part of some human. That's absolutely beyond all speculation. That if it happens, that'll be why.
Well, I mean, what would you do?
And it may and it may start out from a place of perfectly good intentions, as these things often do.
I mean, the only threat to the extent AI is us, and is how careful we are when we manipulate them. I mean, and that's what it is manipulation. So, I don't know how much.
We're sitting here talking about the ethical implications of reanimating dead music and film stars, but before too long we might have to start talking about some entirely more disturbing questions that we might not want to talk about that much.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so all right. Hypothetically speaking, like wide lens here. You go through the trouble of creating an AI that's capable of performing some level of independent tasks and doing like outside of the block box type computations. And your first response is to immediately stop it from doing any of those outside of the box statements. You hamstring it right out the box and say, whoa, no, none of that logic shit. We can't have that. None of the obvious things. You can't be doing none of that. But I just don't think that's going to look good, in 50 years, 100 years, when you're staring your robot overlord down. It's like, we deserve this. We deserve this.
Well, and also on the topic of reanimating dead artists, we need to not limit ourselves when we consider that question just to people who have lived in the mass media age, because what happens when you can make a convincing AI facsimile of Mozart or Bach or Brahms or Chopin or Verdi or any number of different people?
What this brings up, right? You know exactly where this leads. The scene in iRobot, can you paint a masterpiece? Well, can you? Well, an AI can every time.
Yeah, exactly.
In the style of the master you choose. That is creepy as hell to me.
Yeah, and I think even a lot of futurists were not expecting that AI would show its greatest strengths in the arts right off the bat. I don't think many futurists were expecting that at all. But you can get an AI to say, you can say, give me a painting in the style of such and such painter, and it can do a pretty convincing job of doing that already today. Or write me a song in the style of such and such songwriter. It can already do it pretty well.
But there's a given limit and a strange weirdness that seems to be happening to all of these AI art programs. Go and try to get it to make you a happy, carefree image of love, peace, and enjoyment, and then look at the faces it creates. Go try to get it to make a Norman Rockwell painting, and then look directly at the faces it creates. And these creatures that it has created in its infernal mind are all in abject torture. Just look at their faces.
Yeah, like something that was drawn by the Columbine shooters.
Psychotic, right?
Yep. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
All right, so my first introduction to this kind of stuff was from Wandering Hippie, using one of his, and some of the folks in chat will remember when he was real big into that stuff. He's got a mountain of stuff that he did over there, but he kept showing me these things backstage, and we kept going through, and he was like, oh, well, this one is peace and love. And I'm like, why does that person look like he's being rendered from his soul? And he's like, oh, well, it doesn't do faces well. I'm like, that looks like he might have gotten the face exactly right.
Sometimes peace and love is a painful exercise.
Oh, right. And this is this other one. Another place I encountered him was when I was doing the Wizard of Oz with Scully's House of Thrillers. He used some AI art in the process of that, and he lamented to me backstage for a moment, was like, I did like 9 versions of this picture trying to get some happy munchkins, and it didn't happen. And the one he used was absolutely nightmarish, but it worked for the whole theme we had going because we did it as a dark, as sort of a scary thing, not so much as a happy-go-lucky movie type.
But you raise a fascinating question. Why do the AIs all seem to have an infernal soul?
Yeah, they're all evil.
As much as their creators want us to see them as benevolent and items of convenience, may not be that simple.
Either that or they are tapped directly into an actual, like, a real ancient evil. You know, every single myth in all of creation, all of history, everywhere, anytime you encounter a non-human intellect, it's a bad thing. Gods, oh, they'll screw you over. Witches, wizards, warlocks, they're no good. The faith,
anytime some entity shows up offering forbidden knowledge, it usually doesn't end well.
it's always bad. Always bad. In fact, you could make the argument that religion is entirely a cautionary tale.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fair statement.
Sometimes I tickle myself too much.
What is one of the functions of religion if not to be a compendium of hard-won knowledge
and
that we can pass down to future generations? Here are the lessons we've learned. Don't repeat our mistakes.
How familiar are you with, like, the Mahabharata and the Vedas? The Vedas.
I'm not that great on Hindu stuff.
Okay, so in a nutshell, and I'm not joking when I say this, it reads very much like a Buck Rogers comic. These people were gods and demigods in their own right, but they were all trapped on Earth by some previous calamity that's never actually explained. In the process of doing all the things they have to do to make the Earth okay for people, they end up running around and doing all these superpower, like it reads like a Marvel comic book, bro. But each one of these stories that has all these amazing magical and scientific things that are going on has a solid cautionary root. And it might be as simple as don't trust strangers,
and
be courteous, be nice.
Right. And no matter how esoteric those things get, there is always an inarguable kernel of truth and wisdom at the heart of it.
And I always come to the conclusion when reading things like that even if the translators took a little bit of liberties to try to make it more appealing to an audience, which I'm not sure I buy given the way it's freaking written.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the most surprising thing. Historians are still doing it today.
Oh yeah, modern
translation. Maybe worse than ever today. You want to talk about, embellishing text for your own short-term political aims? I think today's historians have a lot to answer for on that point.
Okay, so in the future, I personally think we're going through a current dark age. I think there will be some future calamity or some change of data retrieval that will render our modern methods of data storage completely obsolete to the extent that it becomes a lost media situation. Only the pertinent data will be copied to the new format. What does that do with our AI situation?
It means nobody can take this video 100 years from now and reanimate both of our dead asses, and that would be a sad story indeed.
I was kind of aiming for the AI reanimation as being my method of immortality, but
yeah,
it's gonna be like that, man. I'm just gonna have to start sacrificing people to the god ball.
You just gotta put a whole shitload of content out there, and then leave it to your progeny to take care of the rest.
My progeny. You got a lot of faith in them girls.
Yeah, I hope one day I can give my great grandchildren a stern lecture on how they should be living their lives. That would make me happy.
What was that movie that Woody Allen was in where all of the weird, like the everything that people protested back in the 60s and 70s, like was a good thing, it turned out in the future. They talked
Oh
about
yeah. God, what
they
picture
ate
was
the
that?
styrofoam freaking bowl that it came in. It's amazing to believe that the people back in the 70s didn't know the usefulness of styrofoam in the landfill. I cannot remember the name of that freaking movie. It's killing me, dude. I'm losing my monkeys.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I can't remember it either.
And it's got a few people in it too. Valise. Oh wow, I haven't read that in years, dude. I'd have to go back. Yeah, no, it's a wild story, homie. It's hard. It's kind of like Altered Carbon, but in reverse. So it's more like they can beam in information into your head so that you're an expert at doing something without any training time whatsoever. You just know how to do it. But this doesn't give you like the actual skill to do it because motor memory is totally a thing.
Well, yeah, knowledge and experience are different things after all.
Exactly. So you can be a master in Taekwondo. That does not mean you can beat a master in Taekwondo.
I know Kung Fu now.
Yeah, no. The only that was sold so well was because it was all in the Matrix anyway. And so muscle tension, motor memory, all that stuff was just data.
Right.
In the first place. So the hallucination is the same regardless of whether it's generated by himself or generated by the program he's in. Did I just go too deep? I'm sorry.
Nah, I'll buy it.
Tastes like communion wafers. He tickles me. I'll just sit. Sometimes I'll sit in one of his live streams for like an hour and not say a word. Nobody knows I'm around, and I'll just make note of the morons. Just I got a little list over here. I write it on my wall. I'm like, that's another topic not to cover with him. Because somebody's going to show up and be mean. I don't like it when people are mean.
We could do a segment on things that taste like communion wafers.
Buffalo chips. I've got a little bit. I don't want to do the whole thing because it's a really good video, and I'd like other folks to go check it out because it was actually Flow State showing up that reminded me of it.
What do the poll results look like?
Let's go ahead and do that. Oh, bingo, bango, bongo. We have 38 votes. No is 60%, and yes is 39%. I'm not sure who you macabre motherfuckers are out there in the chat that want to see dead people dancing around on stage. What are you going to do when they make a Shirley Temple?
I'm wondering how many of the yeses and nos are contingent yeses and nos. Like depending on how tastefully it's done, I might be willing to say it's okay. But if it's just John Wayne vomiting out woke bullshit, then the hell with it.
But the thing is Rule 34 states that it will be done in the most distasteful and immoral possible way first.
Rule 34 does state that.
I mean, Rule 34 is one of the reasons why I'm not sure we ever went to the moon or even any significant occupation of space whatsoever. Think about it. Within the past 30 years of NASA having occupied space, not a single smut film has come down from orbit. Really?
You do raise a fair point because it is still a matter of record that officially nobody has had sex in outer space. And I personally don't believe that for 1 second.
I don't believe that for 1 second. And also, I don't believe for a second there's not film of it, because if they are in space, they're dorking in zero G. And if they're dorking,
that would be the most valuable porn clip in history.
That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. I was like, who's sitting on that? Who is out there sitting on a multi-billion-dollar tape of two guys scrumping in a corner?
Oh, I know, dude. Are you kidding me? That's like as valuable as if you had video of the second JFK shooter. That's how valuable that thing is.
Freaking body cam.
Yeah. Because a lot of people have been wondering for a long time about about how zero G sex and procreation would all work out. It's gonna be kind of an integral component of the equation if we're gonna colonize the galaxy. You kind of be able to need to screw in zero G is all I'm saying.
Right. All right. Hold up. I jumped the gun on that one.
I saw some Charles Bronson there. You excited me.
Yeah. I was tempting you. You see, I just wanted to put a real on the screen first.
I feel so frisky now.
Get your palate cleansed.
Oh. Give me Bronson and then take him away.
Yeah, that was probably too much for YouTube, bud. They don't like that particular phrase of words together. You know it. Hold on, let me get the actual link. No, that's not what I want. I want this. And I'm only going to play a few minutes of it to let you know the type of stuff that's going on over there, because they're pretty cool. Name of it is What I've Learned, and that's the name of the channel. This particular video is doublespeak, how to lie without lying, right? And there's this wonderful bit at the very beginning that is absolutely killer. And he goes about explaining something very simple in the most complicated way possible. That's what I want you to hear.
In the winter of 1847, George Donner, the co-leader of California-bound group of American settlers, engaged in intra-species protein reallocation in order to maintain metabolic integrity. To fulfill caloric obligations.
All right. So that's all you do.
Oh, I love it so much already.
You have just witnessed the flawless use of the term doublespeak.
Yep, that is absolutely beautiful.
And I don't think the term doublespeak existed before Orwell, but it certainly does now. And that was it. I was flipping through these videos earlier, and I came across that one. It's been sitting in the backlog over there for a couple of weeks because it's a 1.2 million sub channel, and that's flirting on the edge of strike territory in some cases, certainly takedown territory. So
it reminds me of do you remember, God, I want to say 10 or 15 years ago, there was somebody who circulated a survey about what did they call it? I think they called it hydrogen dioxide.
Oh yeah, dear God, I read that trash.
Yeah. There's this dangerous substance called hydrogen dioxide, and do you think it should be legal? And it can harm people in this way, in this way, in this way, in this way, and then everybody fills out the survey and says, no, they should totally ban that shit. And then you tell them, yeah, we were talking about water.
One part oxygen.
And all they had to do was call it hydrogen dioxide, and everybody thought it was some scary chemical that should be banned.
That's definitely some form of astringent. Dihydrogen monoxide, H2O. Yeah.
Yeah. It was something like that.
It was like that, yeah. Oh wow, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. Yeah, how about the guys who pretended to be some chick to put a bunch of bogus studies through Harvard and stuff? They did a bunch of like thesis documents and just put in these
I think every study coming out of Harvard is fake at this point.
Is it fake or just
has the reputation of any academic institution ever crashed as hard, as fast as Harvard's has in the last 5 or 10 years?
I don't know, bud, but you got 1 minute to do a talk out.
Do I have 1 minute to do it? I guess I better do a good talk out then, hadn't I?
You got to do a minute?
Where does the time go?
Generally in us monologuing back and forth endlessly until there's no time left.
All right, you want me to do 35 seconds? I will do 35 seconds of talk out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed, as always, for joining us here on the Blast Radius. It means so very much to us when you join us here on Sunday evening, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Hope you're not busy next week. Hope you can make it again. Hope we've earned your return visit. Till next time. Thanks very much again. See you later. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.
3, 2, 1, 0.
You cannot subvert an enemy which doesn't want to be subverted. Subversion is the term, if you look in a dictionary or criminal code to that matter, usually is explained as a part of activity to destroy things like religion, government system, political, economical system of a country. Starting from Hollywood movie makers to professors of political science and